Poverty and wealth are not just conditions of the pocket, they are conditions of the mind. If you think like the majority, you'll live like the majority. But if you learn to think differently, the world begins to give you what few people ever achieve: freedom. And it all starts with changing the way you think. Wealth starts in the mind long before it ever shows up in the wallet. That's where it all begins. You see, poverty and wealth are not just numbers on a bank statement. They are states of mind, cultivated in the soil of our daily thinking. I used to believe that wealth was about luck, or about being born into the right family, or perhaps stumbling into the right opportunity. But I came to learn, sometimes the hard way, that two people can stand in front of the same opportunity, and one sees nothing but risk, while the other sees a doorway to abundance. The difference is not the opportunity. The difference is the mind. The way you think determines the doors you'll open. And the truth is, most people never open those doors because their thinking is chained by limitation. They say, I can't afford that. I'm not lucky enough. I don't have the resources. But wealth-minded people ask a different kind of question. They ask, how can I afford it? How can I create the resources? How can I learn what I don't yet know? Notice the difference. It's not in the bank account. It's in the language of the mind. I remember when I was broke, sitting at my kitchen table with more bills than income. I could have said, this is just the way life island. That's what a poor mind says. It accepts struggle as permanent. But I chose instead to ask, what skill could I learn that would change this picture? Who could I model who has achieved what I want? That shift in thinking didn't change my wallet overnight, but it changed my direction immediately. And if you change direction long enough, you eventually change destination. So the first task of building wealth is not opening an investment account, it's opening your mind. It's training yourself to look for growth instead of excuses, to see opportunities instead of obstacles. This takes practice. Just like muscles are built in the gym, wealth thinking is built in the mind. And the workout is simple. Every day, catch one limiting belief you're holding on to and reframe it into a possibility. If your thought says, I'll never be able to save money, you stop and ask, how can I start saving just $1 today? If your thought says, I'm not smart enough to invest, you shift it to, what book or mentor can teach me what I need to know? That one habit of reframing will train your mind to look for answers instead of stopping at problems. Because here's the truth. Money doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are. If your thinking is poor, even wealth will slip through your fingers. But if your thinking is rich, disciplined, creative, resilient, wealth will find its way to you, and it will stay. So wealth is not a destination, it's a mindset. And when the mind is ready, the wallet will follow. The rich understand something that many never grasp. Money lost can be regained, but time lost is gone forever. That truth is so powerful, yet so easily ignored. We live in a world where people trade their time cheaply, as if it's in endless supply. But let me tell you, you can always make another dollar. You can't make another day. Once the clock strikes midnight, that day is gone, and no amount of begging, bargaining, or hustling can buy it back. When I was young and struggling, I thought the answer to my problems was money. If I could just get a few more dollars, maybe I'd fix my situation. But eventually I learned it wasn't dollars I needed most. It was a better respect for my hours. You see, poor thinking spends hours to save pennies. Rich thinking spends pennies to save hours. Because money can be multiplied, but time can only be invested wisely or wasted foolishly. The wealthy don't just guard their money, they guard their calendars. They know that one wasted hour each day adds up to 365 hours a year, That's 9 full 40-hour work weeks. Imagine what you could build with 9 extra weeks each year. A business, a skill, a stronger investment portfolio. The difference between mediocrity and success often comes down to what you do with those scattered hours most people throw away. I remember when I started keeping track of my schedule, it was embarrassing. I discovered hours leaking away on meaningless television, idle chatter, distractions that produce no harvest. And here's the tragedy. I wasn't broke because of lack of opportunity. I was broke because of lack of focus. The moment I began replacing wasted time with productive time, my life started to turn around. Not instantly, but inevitably. So let me give you a strategy. Each week, take an honest audit of your time. Write it down. Look at where the hours went. Then, ask yourself, which of these activities produces nothing? Which of these hours could be redirected to something that compounds wealth? That's the key word, compounding. Activities that build knowledge, develop skills, create products, or invest money, they multiply themselves over time. An hour spent learning, investing pays dividends for decades. An hour spent designing a product can earn you income long after the work is finished. Now here's the practical step. Replace just 1 hour of low-value activity each week with a wealth-building activity. That's it. Swap an hour of scrolling for an hour of reading. Trade 1 evening of idle chatter for 1 evening of planning your financial future. Give up 1 hour of being entertained for 1 hour of being educated. Do it consistently, and you'll be shocked at how quickly your life begins to change. Because here's the truth. Rich people don't have more time than you do. They simply use their time differently. They invest it, they multiply it, and they refuse to waste it. And that one decision to value hours over dollars makes all the difference. The difference between those who struggle all their lives and those who eventually find freedom is not how hard they work, it's what they work for. The poor work for money, but the rich make money work for them. And that simple shift in philosophy changes everything. Wages make you a living, and there's nothing wrong with that. Wages will put food on the table, clothes on your back, maybe even a roof over your head, but wages alone rarely make you free. Assets, on the other hand, make you a fortune. Assets are what keep paying long after you've stopped working, and that's the true secret of wealth. When I was young, I thought if I just worked harder, I'd get ahead. But no matter how many hours I worked, there was always a ceiling, always a cap. That's the trap, trading hours for dollars. It keeps you busy, but never truly free. The wealthy discovered something else. They let money step into the role of worker. They build streams of income that don't require their constant labor. They plant seeds that grow even while they sleep. Think of it like this. If you only ever eat the fruit, you'll go hungry when the season ends. But if you plant the seeds, you'll have orchards that keep producing year after year. That's the difference between consuming wages and creating assets. Assets are your orchards. Real estate that pays you rent, stocks that pay you dividends, businesses that pay you profits, even intellectual property, books, courses, ideas that continue to work long after you created them. So the strategy is simple, but it requires discipline. Every time you earn, don't just think about paying bills. Bills are necessary, but they don't create freedom. Begin setting aside 10 to 20% of your income as seed money for assets. Treat it like a law. It doesn't matter how much you earn. If you make $10, take $1 and invest it. If you make $1,000, Take 200 and put it into something that grows. Don't wait for the perfect amount to start. Waiting is the enemy of wealth. Start small, but start now. I'll never forget when I finally started doing this. At first, it felt almost pointless. How much could a small percentage really do? But months turned into years, and years turned into compound growth. One asset led to another. Suddenly, I had income coming in that wasn't tied to whether I got out of bed that morning. And that's when I realized freedom isn't when you stop working, it's when work becomes optional. So here's the practical step. Starting with your very next paycheck, commit to taking 10-20% and directing it toward assets, real estate, stocks, or a business venture. Make it automatic, so you never give yourself the chance to spend it. It doesn't matter how small it feels today. What matters is consistency, because consistency trickles into streams and streams into rivers. And one day, you'll wake up and realize your money has been working harder than you ever did. That's when you stop chasing survival and start living in freedom. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing they're paid for hours. But the truth is, you don't get paid for time, you get paid for the value you bring to time. Two people can work the same 8 hours, but one earns 10 times more than the other. Why? Not because of the clock, but because of the value packed into those hours. Time is the same for all of us. What changes is what we bring to it. When I first began working, I thought showing up was enough. If I put in the hours, surely I'd be rewarded. But then I noticed others who worked the same hours, sometimes even fewer, yet they earned more, lived better, and grew faster. That taught me an important lesson. The marketplace doesn't reward effort, it rewards value. If you want to change what you earn, you must change what you're worth to the marketplace. Think of it like this. A laborer might dig a ditch for $10 an hour, while an engineer who designs a bridge earns $1,000 in the same hour. Both put in 60 minutes, but the value of their contribution makes all the difference. Wealth flows not to effort, but to solutions. If you can solve small problems, you earn small money. If you can solve big problems, you earn big money. That's the philosophy that separates the rich from the poor. So, what's the strategy? Build skills that increase your capacity to solve bigger and more complex problems. Learn to sell, because everything in life is sales, ideas, products, vision. Learn leadership, because people follow those who can inspire and organize. Learn investing, because it multiplies your decisions across time. Each skill you add doesn't just stack, it multiplies your value. If you know how to sell, and you also know how to lead, your influence grows exponentially. If you know how to invest, and you pair it with communication, you can build something that lasts. I remember when I first learned sales. At the start, I stumbled through words, nervous, hesitant. But I committed just 30 minutes a day to improving, reading, practicing, studying, the masters. Slowly, my words carried more conviction. Soon, my income shifted, not because I worked more hours, but because the hours I worked were worth more. Later, I did the same with leadership. Once I could lead teams, I discovered that I didn't just multiply my effort, I multiplied the efforts of others. That's when growth accelerates. Here's the practical step. Carve out 30 minutes every single day to develop one high-value skill. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't say, when I have more time. Start now. Read a book on leadership. Watch a video on investing. Role play a sales pitch. 30 minutes may not feel like much, but stretched over a year, that's more than 180 hours invested into your growth. And 180 hours on a skill can completely transform your earning power. The rich think this way. How can I make myself more valuable tomorrow than I am today? The poor often ask, how many hours will this take? The rich ask, what's the return if I master this skill? That simple shift in thinking is the difference between running in circles and moving forward. So remember, wealth doesn't come from the clock. It comes from the value you bring to the clock. If you want to earn more, don't add hours, add value. One of the most powerful shifts you can ever make in your life is moving from short-term thinking to long-term vision. The poor think about today, what they can buy, what they can enjoy, what they can show. The rich think about tomorrow, what they can build, what they can sustain, what will last. Poverty and wealth are not just measured in money, but in perspective. Delayed gratification builds empires. Instant gratification destroys them. And that's the difference between someone who stays stuck and someone who breaks free. When I was younger, I often traded the future for the present. If I had a few dollars, I wanted to spend them. I wanted the new suit, the better car, the dinner out. But then I met men and women who thought differently. They didn't spend for today, they planted for tomorrow. They resisted the urge for the quick reward and instead built something that grew. And over time, I saw them accumulate wealth, not because they earned so much more than others, but because they thought further ahead. Here's the truth. Success isn't built in a single day. It's built in a series of disciplined years. The question is, will you sacrifice 5 minutes of pleasure today for 5 years of prosperity tomorrow? Because every financial choice you make is either feeding your future or stealing from it. When you buy something you don't need, just to satisfy the itch of now, you're robbing your future self of freedom. But when you invest that same money, you're planting a seed that can grow into a tree with fruit for decades. That's the strategy. Align your decisions with a 5, 10, and 20-year vision, not just today's comfort. Think of yourself as an architect. You don't just design a living room, you design the whole building. The same is true for your wealth. When you make a decision today, ask, how does this fit into the structure of my 10-year plan? How does this purchase, this investment, this skill contribute to the person I want to become in 20 years? If it doesn't fit the blueprint, then it doesn't belong. I recall one young man who came to me and said, I want to be wealthy like you. I asked him, what are you doing with your money now? He said, well, I just bought a new car and I'm planning a vacation. I said, then you're trading your wealth for toys. Toys won't last. But if you took that same money and invested it in something that grows, you'd start to build wealth that outlives the thrill. That was the turning point for him. Here's a practical step. Before you make any purchase, pause and ask, will this matter in 5 years? If the answer's no, think twice. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy life. It means you enjoy it with wisdom. Save indulgence for when it fits within your long-term vision, not when it competes against it. Buy the suit, take the vacation, but only after the investments are secured, the assets are growing, and the seeds for tomorrow have been planted. Wealthy people master this one habit. They sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term freedom. Poor thinking does the opposite. It sacrifices long-term freedom for short-term pleasure. So decide which future you want, because every choice you make today is either building your future empire or tearing it down before it exists. So remember, the poor ask, what will make me feel good right now? The rich ask, what will make me free 5 years from now? One of the biggest differences I've observed between those who stay broke and those who become wealthy is how they spend their free time. The poor focus on entertainment, the rich focus on learning. It's not that wealthy people never watch a movie or enjoy a ball game. They do, but the ratio is different. Entertainment has its place. It relaxes you. It gives you a laugh, but it doesn't build your future. Learning, on the other hand, changes everything. Formal education may help you earn a living, but self-education, that's what builds a fortune. When I was in my early years, I spent more time being entertained than being educated, and my results showed it. I was broke, working hard, and wondering why nothing was changing. Then I met a mentor who gave me one of the most valuable lessons of my life. He said, if you want things to change, you've got to change. If you want things to get better, you've got to get better. That struck me. And I realized the only way to get better was to start learning deliberately. Not once in a while. Not when it was convenient. Daily. Consistently. That's the strategy. Trade a portion of your entertainment for education. I often ask people, how much time do you spend scrolling, binge watching, or listening to things that don't add any value? Then I ask, what if you took just a fraction of that time and invested it into learning about wealth, leadership, communication, or investing? Over a year, that difference compounds into an entirely different life, because knowledge compounds just like money does. 30 minutes a day might not feel like much, but 30 minutes a day, every day for a year, is over 180 hours of education. Imagine what 180 hours of new ideas could do for your future. I remember carrying books everywhere I went. Sales books, philosophy books, financial books. When other people were gossiping during their lunch break, I was reading. When others were watching television late into the night, I was listening to audio lessons. And slowly, things began to shift. I started talking differently, thinking differently, seeing opportunities where I never saw them before. That's the power of learning. It transforms how you think, and that transformation eventually shows up in how you live. So here's a simple, practical step. Replace 30 minutes of daily entertainment with learning. If you watch 2 hours of TV at night, cut it to 90 minutes and use the last 30 to read a book on business, money, or personal growth. If you commute, instead of listening only to music, add a podcast or audio book that educates you. Turn your car into a classroom, turn your phone into a library, and turn your habits into a school for success. The poor laugh their way through the evening and wonder why nothing changes. The rich learn their way through the evening and watch their life transform. It's not about avoiding fun, it's about choosing the kind of fun that also feeds your future. Because the truth is, wealth is attracted to those who prepare for it, and preparation comes through education. So remember this, a little entertainment makes life enjoyable, but learning daily makes life extraordinary. Don't just consume for the moment, learn for a lifetime. One of the greatest lessons I ever learned is that wealth is not just about what you accumulate, it's about what you contribute. Too many people think the purpose of money is to gather as much as possible, pile it high, and sit on it. But that kind of thinking is empty. True wealth is not measured by what you keep, but by what you give. If you really want to feel rich, take a portion of what you've earned and use it to bless someone else. That's when money takes on a whole new meaning. It stops being just about survival and becomes about significance. I used to think the whole goal of money was to earn more, save more, and buy more. But when I started practicing generosity, I discovered a secret. Contribution multiplies wealth faster than selfishness ever could. It multiplies because giving opens doors, builds relationships, creates goodwill, and aligns you with the very laws of abundance. Money follows value, and when you serve, you create more value than you consume. That's why the wealthy understand this principle so deeply. They're not only focused on accumulation, but on making an impact that outlives them. Let me give you a practical perspective. Imagine you're earning a good living, but every dollar is spent on yourself. You may feel satisfied for a while, but over time that satisfaction fades. Compare that to someone who takes even 5% or 10% of their income and directs it toward a cause bigger than themselves. That money, instead of being consumed, plants seeds in people, in projects, in communities, and just like nature teaches us, seeds multiply. What you give away often comes back in ways you can't even measure. I remember a time when I was struggling financially, yet my mentor encouraged me to give, even if it was a small amount. I thought, how can I give when I barely have enough for myself? But he reminded me that generosity isn't about the amount, it's about the principle. It's about building the habit of contribution into your character. So I started small. Maybe it was a few dollars to help a neighbor or supporting a cause I believed in, and little by little, it changed me. I noticed my mindset shift from scarcity to abundance. Instead of asking, how can I hold on to this? I started asking, how can I create more so I can give more? That one change of focus expanded my capacity for wealth. Contribution also builds a legacy. Nobody remembers the size of your bank account, but they remember the lives you touched. That's why I tell people to include contribution in their wealth plan. Don't just plan for the house, the investments, and the retirement fund. Plan for the impact you'll leave behind. Wealth that dies with you is incomplete. Wealth that outlives you is true success. So here's a simple step to put this into action. Commit to giving 5-10% of your income to something beyond yourself. It doesn't have to be huge. It could be supporting a charity, helping someone in need, or funding a project in your community. The habit matters more than the amount. Over time, this habit won't just enrich others, it will enrich you in ways that money alone never could. At the end of the day, the rich know that money is a tool, not just for accumulation, but for contribution. And the more you give, the more you grow, not just in wealth, but in significance. Most people approach money like they're just trying to survive another day. They're playing defense. They're holding on, trying not to lose, hoping nothing unexpected comes along to wipe them out. And don't get me wrong, defense matters. You need to protect what you have. But if all you ever do is defend, you'll never win the game. The wealthy understand this. They don't just play to survive, they play to win. They know the purpose of money is not just to be preserved, but to be multiplied. When I first started learning about money, I was guilty of playing too safe. I would save a little, hold it close, and worry about what could go wrong. But I realized that this mindset kept me exactly where I was, struggling, hoping, waiting. One day, my mentor said, "You can't coast your way to wealth. You've got to make bold, calculated moves. You've got to put money to work." That hit me hard. Wealth isn't built by hiding from risks. It's built by managing them, by stepping into opportunities that others are too afraid to take. Now, I'm not talking about gambling or recklessness. I'm talking about calculated risks. There's a difference. Gambling is throwing money at chance and hoping for luck. A calculated risk is when you've studied, prepared, and positioned yourself to benefit if things go right, and if they don't, you still learn and grow. The wealthy understand this distinction. They know some ventures won't work out, but they also know one smart move can outweigh a dozen small setbacks. Think of it like a farmer. If a farmer plays defense, he'll never plant anything because planting carries risk. What if the rain doesn't come? What if pests show up? What if the crop fails? But the farmer also knows that without planting, there's no harvest. He takes the risk, not recklessly, but with preparation. He studies the soil, chooses the right seed, and works the land. That's how wealth is built. not by avoiding the risk of planting, but by planting wisely. In my own journey, I remember when I first invested in a small business idea. It scared me because I had barely enough saved, but I reminded myself that money is a tool. It's not meant to sit idle. That little investment didn't make me wealthy overnight, but it taught me lessons that became priceless. It showed me how business works, how money can flow, and how value creates more value. That risk, though small, opened the door to larger opportunities later on. This is the mindset shift you need to make. Stop asking, how can I not lose? And start asking, how can I win? Stop focusing only on saving pennies and start looking for ways to create dollars. Saving is important, yes, but saving alone won't make you wealthy. Offense, investing, creating, building, that's where the real game is played. So here's a practical step. Each year, commit to one calculated financial risk. It might be buying into a new investment, starting a side business, or even learning a skill that positions you in a growing industry. The point is not the size of the step. The point is to keep playing offense. Over time, those offensive moves compound, and that's when you go from surviving to thriving. Because in the end, money rewards those who play to win, not just those who play to avoid losing. Most people measure their wealth by a number on paper. They look at their house, their car, their retirement account, and they say, I'm worth this much. But the truth is, none of that matters if it doesn't put food on the table, pay your bills, or give you freedom. You can have a high net worth on paper and still be broke when it comes to your daily life. That's because paper wealth doesn't pay the bills, cash flow does. The rich understand this distinction, and it changes the way they approach money. When I was younger, I used to admire those who had big houses, fancy cars, and impressive titles. But then I learned that many of them were drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck, or waiting for the next bonus just to stay afloat. Their net worth looked great on a balance sheet, but it didn't translate into freedom. Contrast that with someone who owns a few rental properties, some dividend-paying stocks, or a small business that generates steady income. That person may not look wealthy on the surface, but their life feels wealthy because they've built a system where money comes in whether they show up to work or not. Cash flow is the difference between a life of stress and a life of choice. Think about it. If all your monthly expenses are covered by income from assets, your job becomes optional. You don't have to work for money anymore. You get to choose what kind of work you want to do. That's the real definition of wealth. Freedom of choice, not just numbers on a paper statement. It's the same reason why businesses care more about revenue and cash flow than just the value of their brand. A company could be valued at billions, but if it can't generate consistent income, it collapses. And the same principle applies to your personal finances. A big house doesn't pay you. A car doesn't pay you. Even a large retirement account doesn't pay you until you convert it into income streams. What matters is, do you have money flowing to you every month without you having to trade your time for it? I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I focused too much on appearances. I saved, I bought things that impressed others, and I thought I was making progress. But when life hit, when the bills came due, when opportunities showed up, I realized I didn't have freedom. What changed everything for me was the moment I bought my first cash-flowing asset. It wasn't much, just a small stream from an investment, but the feeling of money coming in without me lifting a finger was life-changing. It showed me the difference between looking rich and being rich. So here's the practical step. This year, commit to acquiring at least one cash-flowing asset. It could be something small, maybe a few shares in a dividend-paying stock, a modest rental property, or even royalties from something you create. Don't wait for the big opportunity. Start with the small one. The point is to begin the process of building streams of income that free you from the trap of only working for money. Because wealth isn't about what you look like on paper. Real wealth is when the money keeps flowing, even when you stop working. Knowledge by itself is wonderful, but let's be honest, it doesn't pay the bills. You can fill your mind with ideas, attend seminars, read every book on the shelf, and still struggle financially if you don't learn how to convert that knowledge into something that produces income. The rich understand this simple but powerful truth. Knowledge must be transformed into assets. Ideas don't pay until they become products, services, or systems that serve people. That's the bridge between potential and prosperity. I remember early in my career, I was absorbing everything I could, listening to mentors, reading books, taking notes. But one day someone asked me a question that changed my perspective. What are you doing with all that information? At first, I didn't have a good answer. I was learning, yes, but I wasn't applying. And more importantly, I wasn't turning that learning into value that others could benefit from. That's when it hit me. Knowledge becomes wealth only when it's packaged in a way that others can consume. Think about it. Every product you see on the shelf started as an idea in someone's mind. Every book you've ever read, every course you've taken, every service you've paid for, those were once just pieces of knowledge or experience someone decided to package and share. The difference between the poor and the rich isn't just in what they know, but in what they do with what they know. So how do you turn knowledge into an asset? You start by asking, what do I know that could help someone else? Maybe it's a skill you've mastered at work. Maybe it's lessons you've learned from failure. Maybe it's insights about health, finance, or relationships. Whatever it is, there's someone out there willing to pay for that knowledge if you deliver it in a way that solves their problem. The rich know how to multiply their knowledge by putting it into systems, books, courses, businesses, or consulting. That's why they keep getting richer, not because they simply know more, but because they've learned how to leverage what they know. I'll tell you from personal experience, the first time I packaged my knowledge into something tangible, it felt small. It wasn't a best-selling book or a multi-million-dollar business, but it proved the concept. People were willing to exchange money for the lessons I had already lived. That one step became the foundation for greater opportunities. And the same can happen for you. The strategy is simple. Take one piece of knowledge or skill you have and package it. Write a short book. Create a simple online course. Offer consulting or coaching to someone just a few steps behind you. Don't wait until it's perfect. Start where you are, because once you do, you've created an asset that can pay you not once, but over and over again. So here's the challenge. Within the next 6 months, commit to turning one piece of your knowledge into an asset. Don't let your ideas sit idle in your head. Put them to work, because when you turn knowledge into assets, you stop trading time for money and start building wealth that multiplies even when you're not there. Luxury has its place. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the fruits of your labor, driving a nice car, living in a comfortable home, or traveling the world. But let me tell you, that's not the ultimate purpose of wealth. The real test of wealth is not what it buys you while you're alive, but what it allows to continue long after you're gone. The rich understand this. Wealth is not just about lifestyle, it's about legacy. It's about building something that outlives you, something that carries your values, your work, and your impact forward to the next generation. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a wealthy businessman many years ago. He said to me, "The measure of my wealth isn't what I enjoy, it's what my children's children will enjoy because of the decisions I make today." That struck me deeply. Because most people are only thinking about the next weekend, the next purchase, the next vacation. But the wealthy are thinking decades ahead, even generations ahead. They ask, "What can I build today that my family will thank me for tomorrow?" That's the difference in mindset. The poor and middle class often spend everything they earn on things that disappear: a meal, a gadget, a car payment. The rich direct a portion of their wealth toward things that will stand the test of time: businesses, properties, trusts, and investment accounts that keep paying long after their name is forgotten. And you don't have to be a millionaire to think this way. Even a modest income, when managed with legacy in mind, can create a ripple effect that changes the course of a family tree. The strategy is straightforward. Think systems, not splurges. Instead of asking, "What can I buy to look wealthy?" ask, "What can I build that will make my children truly wealthy?" That might mean setting up a business that can be passed down, creating an estate plan that protects your family from confusion and taxes, or establishing a generational investment account where contributions compound for decades. Each step you take with legacy in mind multiplies your wealth beyond your lifetime. And let me offer a practical step you can take starting today. Draft a simple plan. You don't need to know everything about estate law or trusts right now. Just begin by writing down what you want your wealth to accomplish beyond your lifetime. Then take one tangible action. Open a generational investment account. Meet with an estate planner, or designate beneficiaries on your assets. Small steps, when aligned with legacy thinking, create massive results over time. Because here's the truth: luxury fades, but legacy endures. The car you drive today will one day rust. The clothes you wear will one day be forgotten. But the systems, the habits, and the structures you build with your wealth can outlive you, bless others, and carry your name into the future with honor. Build wealth not just for luxury, but for legacy. That's when money becomes more than currency. It becomes a heritage. One of the greatest illusions about wealth is that once you have it, you can stop learning. But let me tell you, the moment you stop learning is the moment your wealth begins to slip away. The world keeps moving, markets keep shifting, opportunities keep changing. And if you decide to sit back and rely on yesterday's knowledge, you'll soon find yourself outpaced by someone hungrier, sharper, and better informed. Wealth is not a finish line, it's a moving target. And the people who stay wealthy are the ones who keep learning, even when they no longer need the money. I've met people who climbed their way to great success, built businesses, and amassed fortunes, only to lose it all because they assumed their old knowledge would carry them forward forever. They stopped reading, they stopped attending seminars, they stopped asking questions, and they stopped growing. Meanwhile, the world didn't stop changing. A competitor with fresher ideas came along. A new technology disrupted their industry. And because they weren't learning, they weren't ready. On the other hand, I've met wealthy men and women who didn't need to learn another thing for survival, yet they kept their minds sharp, curious, and hungry. They read books, they asked questions, they sought mentors, and as a result, not only did they protect their fortunes, they multiplied them. The philosophy is simple. The wealthiest minds remain students for life. Think about it. Formal education may prepare you for a career, but self-education prepares you for a fortune. And that education never ends. You don't graduate from learning when you graduate from school. You graduate from learning the moment you decide to. And that is the day your decline begins. So the strategy is this: stay curious. Be curious about markets. Be curious about people. Be curious about technology. about psychology, about leadership, about wealth itself. The more you understand how the world works, the more opportunities you'll see that others miss. Curiosity is the fuel of growth, and growth is what keeps your wealth alive. And if you want a simple, practical step to make this real, here it is. Commit to reading one new book a month on money, psychology, or business. That's 12 books a year. Over 10 years, that's 120 books. Can you imagine the advantage you'll have over someone who reads nothing but headlines or gossip columns? Knowledge compounds just like money. Every new insight builds on the last. Every lesson adds another brick to the fortress of your financial future. So never let your wealth outgrow your wisdom. Stay a student, even when you're a master. Stay humble enough to learn from anyone, and wise enough to know that the moment you think you've arrived, you're already on the way down. Wealth fades in the hands of the ignorant, but it multiplies in the hands of the student who never stops learning. Let me leave you with this. Wealth is not a mystery. It's a set of disciplines. It begins in the mind before it shows up in the wallet. It grows when you value time more than money, when you learn every day, when you invest not just in assets but in yourself. It expands when you focus on contribution, not just accumulation. And it lasts when you think legacy, not just luxury. But none of this works if it stays only as words. Knowledge without action is wasted potential. The question is not what you've heard tonight, but what you'll do tomorrow morning. Will you write down your financial goals? Will you cut one unnecessary expense and redirect it toward an investment? Will you pick up a book instead of the remote? Wealth doesn't arrive with one grand gesture. It arrives with small, consistent steps, repeated over time. So act. Begin where you are, with what you have. Plant the seed, water it daily, and watch the forest grow. Because the future belongs to those who discipline their habits today. The choice is yours. Stay the same or start building the life you were meant to live.